Welcome to Building Your Leader Brand. Today on the show, Bob is speaking with Anita Henderson.
Our brains are trained to connect with story. And so I tell these leaders, these entrepreneurs, these C-suite executives that you have a specific and unique approach to this topic, and you have some amazing stories that can be added. Let's tell those stories because nobody's story is yours. So we'll infuse those stories to support the points you're making and make your book unique.
Hi there and welcome back to Building Your Leader Brand. My name is Bob Gentle and every week I speak with incredible people who share their secrets to building, marketing and monetizing their expertise and the mindset you need for your business to grow and thrive. If you're new to the show, then while you still have whatever device it is in your hand, take a moment to subscribe or follow or whatever it is on the device or the app that you're using, but make sure that you can come back and enjoy more episodes. This week, we're really going to be digging into some essentials around building that leadership brand. And to help me with this, I am delighted to welcome Anita Henderson. Anita, welcome.
Thanks so much, Bob. Great to be here.
So we've been attempting to get this off the ground for a little while now. I've had a couple of accidents that I won't even go into. Not physical accidents, but just, if I'm honest, DIY gone wrong, leading to all kinds of unforeseen consequences, which nobody cares about, nobody needs to know about. But thank you for your patience, and I'm really looking forward to this. So for the listener who's meeting you for the first time, can you start just by maybe telling us a little bit about who you are, where you are, and what it is you actually do?
Well, again, great being here. Thanks for having me. And I am known as the author's midwife. Yikes, the author's midwife. So I coach and guide seasoned entrepreneurs and C-suite executives to write, publish, and leverage their books. My clients are looking to use book publishing as a marketing strategy. So I am an author coach and a book publishing strategist, and I help my clients not only get their books written and published, but also to become smarter about the publishing process and what it means to leverage a book in their existing brand. So most want to, for the C-suiters, they want to go on to either be consultants. Many of them are within about 5 years of retirement. And they're looking at what's the next chapter in my life. And let me write the book now so that will help me probably accelerate getting to where I want to be. So it could be they want to be on the big stage and get paid huge honorariums to speak in front of large audiences. They may want to do some consulting or be on corporate boards as they lead into retirement. So those are my C-suiters. For my entrepreneurs who've been around the block for a few years, usually about a decade, close to a decade, they have a system or a process or an approach to whatever they do, and they want to share what that is in their book. So they are writing sometimes memoir, sometimes they are writing instructional books. Maybe they are exploring a particular subject matter, something they become known for or known as, and they want to share that. Oftentimes, those entrepreneurs write their book as a leave behind, as a client magnet, so to speak. And it really positions them as the credible expert in their field and certainly helps to boost their visibility in their industry. So I love the trajectory, the arc, so to speak, to watch my clients come to me with just an idea. And we work over months to shape that idea into engaging content for their book. And then I watch the evolution of the headaches they have of writing content and understanding the publishing process through suddenly loving the content that they've written, and then finally holding their finished book in their hand and sometimes crying and saying, look what we've done together. We made a book, baby. So that's why I'm known as the author's midwife. I love it.
So a lot of people talk about writing a book, but they never actually do it. They might not even talk about it. They might just think about it. And I think there's a lot of myths around what it actually takes to write a book and publish it. What are the most common myths that you encounter And how do you actually approach breaking down those myths to make that process feel more accessible?
Well, you're right. There are a lot of people who talk about writing a book, even more who secretly want to write a book, and they just never get to it. I'll tell you, many of my clients come to me and say, Anita, I've been trying to write this book for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, been trying. And of course, my thought is, really? Have you been trying for 5 years to write a book? And so it's a challenge. I think one of the myths that people come to me with is that you have to be a really good writer in order to write a book. And I say, no, not necessarily. I think you need to know what you're writing about. You need to absolutely have some insight and experience in the subject matter you're covering. But with the way we approach book writing, which includes a high level of revisions and edits, we've got your back, right? You don't have to know all of the sentence structure and syntax and all those kinds of things. You need to know what you're talking about. We've got your back with everything else. So you don't have to be, the next literary giant in order to write a good nonfiction book. We have beta readers, we have editors on our staff, proofreaders who will see the book multiple times. So those issues are not that big a deal. One of the other myths I think people have is that it's quick. Maybe it's fading these days, but there's been this suggestion in many programs online to write a book in a weekend, or you can write a book, in 2 days or, 2 weeks. And I think that's a huge myth. I don't think you could write a good book in a weekend. Not the type of book I would think that a professional would choose to use to enhance their credibility and visibility. So it's not about going fast, it's about doing the book right. So, the idea that you could write a book really fast and hurry up and get it on, online for people to sell and, print 1,000 copies and sell them at your next speaking engagement. You don't want to do that. You really do want to go through the process, which takes, in the way we do it, about 9 to 12 months.
So author and authority go hand in hand. And I think for somebody looking at building a strong personal brand, a strong leadership brand, most importantly, a book can be a really strong status indicator, even when nobody reads it. But that's sort of one surface level of simply using it as a brand positioning play. When people are using a book as a lead generation tactic, all books are not equal. Some books will trigger people to take action, and other books, they often don't have that back end in. And at which stage, when you're working with an author, are you talking about what happens if somebody reads this book? What have you prepared for them in order to give them a next step? Because I find a lot of the time people think about the book, but they don't think about what happens if it works.
And they don't think about what does it mean for it to work, right? So yeah, we talk about lead generation and return on investment from day one. So as my clients come into our process, we start with a full day of strategizing. We spend the full day, whether it's in person, if they meet me here near Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States, or we spend a day just like this online, smiling at each other and cranking it out for hours and hours. We take breaks, but we work on the structure of their book, certainly the stories that need to be included in the book, and we can talk story a little bit later. But most importantly, we work on the strategy of what it means to be a published author, and how do you use your book as leverage to get to the outcome that you want as an author, and certainly to guide your readers to do the next thing you want them to do. And usually those things go hand in hand. So typically, authors want to use their book as a lead generator, as a visibility booster. How does that work? And so we employ a tactic that I call seed, lead, and leverage. So we talk about during our VIP day, what do you have in your toolkit right now that you can plant a seed inside your book to lead people to your landing page typically. so that you can leverage your book. So oftentimes we have content, for example, I'm working with an author in the education space. And so they have some worksheets. They're writing a book about kind of the future of education in collaboration, homeschooling in collaboration with public schooling and some other wonderful online opportunities. And part of their seed is worksheets that students can use, or scheduling tools and tips that parents can use to help their students do better and focus. And so, in the content of the book, and it is certainly relevant to whatever chapter we're in, it'll say, to download the worksheet for this lesson, go to basically our landing page.com/book resources or whatever. And of course, as landing pages work, readers exchange their name and email address to access that resource. So that's the seed that leads them to the landing page. So now they can leverage the book. How else do you know who purchases your book and what they're interested in, right? Because when you sell your book online, those retailers don't let you know who bought it. In this way, you get a chance to know who purchased your book, what they're interested in, and you can further communicate with them as time goes on. So that's seed, lead, and leverage. That's one of the ways we help authors really leverage their book. These days, there's also in the front of a book, typically, what we call a bonus page, which is different from that seed, lead, and leverage, but often it is available even when you go on online and look at a book and there's the look inside feature. That bonus page is often one of the pages that's shown, and people, maybe before they even buy the book, they may download your bonus to see what you're all about. And again, you're capturing leads there. So there are many opportunities for authors these days to learn more about their readers and to use their book as leverage.
That read more bonus page, that's, if anybody's paying attention and they're actually writing a book just now, that's gold. It's so smart. So you mentioned that there are lots of people, and I find this across the online space, who who are very focused on the quick wins, the shortcuts, the hacks. There are lots of ways that it appears that you can cheat your way to success. My own experience is sometimes, for a very, very small number of people, those things can work. And they're often held up as the examples of, this is why it worked. Look, everybody, it works. Some people have probably written a book in a weekend. Some people have probably done all the different snake oil things that everybody hears about. They get targeted by Facebook ads. But this is really depending on luck, and luck is not a plan. One of the things, and I'm going to pivot now into your own book. I think it's been out for about a year, How to Become the Minimalist Entrepreneur. And I think this is an important place to go to now, because it's really getting at the heart of a book as a strategy and really going all in on one thing rather than trying to spin all the plates that everybody tells you you need to. So can you maybe tell us a little bit about that book and the underlying philosophy, and then we can maybe roll on from there a little bit and bring that back to how that maybe applies to other people?
My memoir, Becoming the Minimalist Entrepreneur, lessons from my journey to work less, earn more, and play more. That's my memoir. It launched about a year ago, and it is my expose of my journey in about a quarter century as an entrepreneur. Sounds like forever, but there have been a lot of ups and downs in the journey, a lot of trial and error and mistakes and successes. And I share many of those lessons I have learned in the book. And sort of the bottom line to my journey, this might be different and probably is for other entrepreneurs, but the bottom line in my journey is sort of threefold. It is what has helped me get to where I am right now is to clarify, to simplify, and to focus. That's it. Super easy. Clarify what you do, why you're doing it, and who you're doing it for. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs are so confused. We're all over the place, especially when we start. We bring a skill set to the entrepreneurial table and we think that we're going to do that. And from there, it expands to something else and we add a few more things and that doesn't work. So we think we need to throw some more stuff in the bucket. And, we are confused. And it is a trial and error kind of thing. But once you get to the point in your business where you can clarify what you do, then you're focusing on doing it really, really well. When you can clarify who you do it for, you're not all over the place trying to serve 1,000 different people groups at the same time. So clarity is key in becoming the minimalist entrepreneur. The next thing is to simplify. Once you're clear, simplify what you do. We've gotten so enamored with this hustle and grind culture where we work, all these hours and there's team no sleep. And, I work for the weekends and I do all these things and it's tiring. It takes the fun out of being an entrepreneur. We choose to be a business owner, most of us, right? Whether that means we have had to transition out of corporate or choose to transition out of corporate, we choose entrepreneurship oftentimes. Now, unless you're part of a family business where you're sort of forced into it, most of us choose it. And so it is really essential that you learn to simplify what you do. Complicating your business structure, your business model, your service or product delivery is a recipe for disaster. So find the way to simplify what you do and then just focus on that. Focus on that. Well, who wrote the book, The One Thing, right? We just need to find our one thing and do it really, really well. Serve the one people group sometimes, right? That one target audience, and you can expand from there. Most entrepreneurs start with, I want to serve everybody. And then they eventually scale it down over years and years and years of trying to do that. Instead, I say approach it with a more simplistic focus. And I think that for me has been my recipe for success.
It makes a lot of sense. And I think there is a very big industry focused on complexity and making everything seem very complicated. And it can be very complicated and you can be very successful in making it complicated. But having done this show for as long as I have, spoken to nearly 300 people, one of the things that I've found is success generally, and I'm talking like significant success, not just doing okay, but doing extremely well, is never the result of complexity. Never. Right. It's always the result, as you said, of being really clear on who you are and what the value is that you offer for them. Really simplifying down, these are the ways that I'm going to actually engage with and communicate with those people, and then go all in.
Yeah.
That is almost always the path to success.
Yeah. I have learned also, Bob, that processes, we hear it all the time, processes and systems and things, they really do work. When you sit down and think about what do I do and how do I do it, right? Let's say you're totally clear on who you do it for or who you offer your product to. But think about the process it takes for you to create and deliver whatever it is you do. I've learned if I do something twice, it's part of a process, right? So one time it's just maybe a one-off, but if I do it twice, multiple times, then that's part of the process. And let's plug it in somewhere and let's figure out what happens before that, what happens after that, what's the result that should come from that one action. And that helps us smooth out the bumpy parts of how do I do what I do. That's the juggle and the struggle that early stage entrepreneurs go through, right? They're trying to figure it out. Well, as you figure it out, my advice to you is if you're doing something twice, anything, whether it's a phone call, sending the same type of email, or creating a thing, how do you create that thing? If you do it the same way twice, that's part of your process. Plug it in. And when I learned to create processes, it really smoothed out my creation of my services and the delivery of them.
I think the reason, and there's lots of areas of business where this can seem very obvious, but there are a lot of areas of our businesses where this is really not obvious. And something I find myself speaking about with clients quite often is, what are the moments of impact in your business where you need to transition a conversation from, hey, we're having a nice time here, to, hey, would you like to have a conversation about what I do? If we can script those moments of impact so we don't have to be creative in the moment, we now have a process.
Yeah.
And we can then test processes, we can adjust processes. Most people in their business, by paying attention to, as you said, those things that we do more than once, or those moments of impact, again, where they're often more than once, but we maybe can't delegate them. Because I think a lot of the things you described, they're systems that not only can they be processes, but they can be processes that we can delegate in order to simplify.
Yeah.
But there are those moments of impact that we have to do ourselves. But if we were doing the work once and then leaning on a system going forwards, everything would be much more relaxing and we would be much more effective. I think there's an important aspect of it from my perspective.
Agree. Yeah.
So I want to maybe bring things back to the book Midwife. I think it was important to speak about the minimalist entrepreneur and what that means. But a lot of people, they look at the book writing process and they get overwhelmed perhaps by the practical aspects of it. But a lot of people, I feel, are far more challenged by the imposter syndrome side of things. Who am I to write this book? Or somebody else is this is a big one. Somebody else is a much bigger expert in this than I am. And I think that I found this to be universally the case. It doesn't matter who you are. There's always somebody who knows more than you. Is that something that comes up often when you're speaking with clients, or have they got past it by the time they come to you?
Oh my goodness. That comes up 80% to 90% of the time, even with extremely successful CEOs. Who am I to be writing this book? I mean, really, there are already 100 books on this topic. I mean, I can't even tell you, maybe I can. We've done at least 10 books on the topic of leadership. How many leadership books have you read? I mean, there's hundreds, thousands of them. But people are still writing books on the topic of leadership, for example. So sure, leaders come to me and say, I don't know if I should write. I've been thinking about this, but I don't know if I should write this. I've had some success, but who am I really? Because XYZ person has already written the book on it. Well, my response to that is, but they don't have your story. They are not coming at it from your angle. Let's figure out what your unique contribution is to the leadership space or whatever topic you're writing on, and focus on that. Because one of the key elements of any book, including nonfiction, again, subject matter exploration or instructional or whatever, one of the key elements is story. Story. Our brains are trained to connect with story. And so I tell these leaders, these entrepreneurs, these C-suite executives, that you have a specific and unique approach to this topic, and you have some amazing stories that can be added. Let's tell those stories, because nobody's story is yours. So we'll infuse those stories to support the points you're making and make your book unique, so much different from any other book under the same topic that is out there. So there's that. And then there is, again, that imposter syndrome of who am I? And I'm not a good writer. And, I'm not important enough or famous enough. We deal with that a lot. And of course, that's mindset. And that is helping people understand that your contribution, your knowledge, your experience, your expertise is valuable. It is valuable. That while perhaps everyone, certainly not everyone, is going to read your book, and they just won't. That's not our goal, is never to make sure everybody has a copy of your book in their hand. The point is that your book and your stories and your methods reach the right person, the right audience for you. So, yeah, we don't go into it thinking that we're going to reach the masses. The point is to attract the right audience for you and for your book to tell your stories?
A lot of people don't actually understand the wealth of story that they actually have. I've found this quite often when I come at it from a content marketing perspective, or I'm trying to help people connect with their audiences a little more. And being somebody who's process oriented, stories are the raw material that really matter in your business. What processes do you have to help people surface their own stories?
Again, going back to that early connection with them, that VIP day where we're either online or in person, and we talk through the structure of their book. So typically they know what types of things they want to teach. Well, I want to teach how you get from here to here and ABC and those kinds of things. They know their process, but they don't often know what stories belong with it. So it is a conversation. Quite frankly, our VIP day is sort of like therapy. Many of my clients have said that this was so therapeutic. There was a time back in the day, especially when I work with folks who are writing memoir, I sort of I time the day to figure out at what point are they going to start crying? At what point do they get the teary eyes? And I tell them, well, tell me a story about that. Inevitably, often our memoirists begin, it's therapeutic. They start to cry. They're remembering things they have forgot. That's it. That is a great story. I had a wonderful CEO in Houston, Texas, and she was talking about her process. I said, well, tell me a story about that. Like, it was a specific, character trait that she had. And I says, well, how did you develop that? And she talked about years earlier when she was a young woman being held at gunpoint and how she talked the gunman down basically from pulling the trigger. And that helped her realize this particular trait of hers. And she just was like, I forgot all about that story. I'm like, how could you? That became the opening to her book. It was a hook. So we kind of dig deep. I ask questions. That's one of my superpowers is asking the right questions of my clients. It's the whole, and then what? And then what? And how did you get to that point? So I think that's part of the richness of using an author coach is that provides someone who can help sort of dig up some of those stories and help you craft them and place them in the appropriate place and make sure that they're relevant throughout your book. So I think that's a gift that I give my clients is that I ask them the right questions, walk them through those stories, and then plug them into the right place once we have that structure.
So once a book is done, it's out in the market. Having done this so many times, you must have a sense for when a book is successful. And when I mean successful for the business owner rather than commercially successful. How much of that is down to the book versus how that book was exploited or supported by the author?
I think the success of the book itself is, first of all, you have to have a good product, period. You don't want to bait and switch. It doesn't matter how great your marketing is. If once people get your product, it's terrible, that looks bad on you. So our initial and overarching purpose is to make sure that our end product, which is books, is high quality from cover to cover. So much of success relies on marketing. You know that. Messaging, putting your book in the right place. And really with this process, because it takes some time, about a year, my recommendation to any author I'm working with is to start promoting your book now. Start talking about it from the day we sign the contract, right? You can start posting or sharing with your subscriber list. I just signed on with an author coach and a publishing strategist, and I'm super excited. We're going to write this book and bring your followers and fans along the journey with you. So now you're creating a fan base. So they already like you, right? They're following you on social media. They've subscribed to your newsletter. You are speaking to them in your presentations. But now you're also talking to them about the fact that this time next year, my book will be out. And if you would like to be one of the first to learn about that when the book launches, get on my list. That's super easy. Everybody wants to be the first to know, right? Sure, you can offer gifts and that kind of thing. So the marketing begins from day one. You start promoting it, you bring your followers along the journey, you allow them to help you, and we've all seen this, choose your book cover. Maybe you ask them what they think a good subtitle that rings true to them could be. You might even share an excerpt or two, a quote from the book as you go along writing. Tell them how frustrated you are with the process. I can't believe I have had to review and revise this book 5 times, whatever. People want to join the journey. You will find that many people who are following your journey as an author will say, I've always wanted to write a book myself. Or, hey, I'm cheering for you. I can't wait for your book to come out. Or, I'd like to be one of your early beta readers so I can give you some feedback, whatever. So the marketing begins very early on, and it certainly extends well beyond launch day. And for years and years, again, with a well written book, you as the author should be super proud to continue promoting it for years and years and years. It is a part of your marketing toolkit. It is not just something that's available and exciting to talk about for a year or 2 years. I have a client who wrote his book 12 years ago. He was just invited to speak in Spain about his findings, about his research, and his book. So keep promoting the book in various ways, what works for you. And don't try to throw it all in the marketing bucket. Bob will tell you that. You can't do all the things all the time, but find what works for you with book marketing and do it consistently.
I remember it was probably about 10 years ago. I was in a car detailing place. My car was in. I did not have a fancy car at all. I think we were going away somewhere and we had to have the car cleaned properly, not by me. And there was a Ferrari in there, and I was speaking to the guy who owned the place, and he said, there's a guy, I don't know what he does, but he always has his Ferrari cleaned once a week. 5 minutes later, the guy walked in, and me being me, back then I was largely focused on selling agency services. And I thought, potential customer. So I said, what is it you actually do? And he said, I train people in customer services. He said, well, what do you do for marketing? Ferrari, you must have plenty of money. You got to hire me. And he said, well, about 15 years ago, I wrote a book. It's a really simple little book. And I give it away everywhere I go. And the phone just rings. And I've never done any marketing. I just make sure that the people who are in a position to hire me get this book. The thing with books, nobody ever throws them away. And he said sometimes these books have just been lingering in offices for 4 or 5 years. And then one day they make the decision and they go pick up the book and they call the guy. And I've never forgotten that. He must have written that book 15 years before I met him. And he went straight into the Ferrari's boot and pulled out a copy and gave it to me. And I wish I still had it, because I probably did throw it out. But that really is the lesson for me. And it crystallizes down to, you don't need lots of big, complex strategies. Sometimes it's just a simple plan, given time to grow, and it can grow into something wonderful.
Absolutely. Great story. Yes, I've had many of my clients do just that. Their strategy is not to sell their book. It's not even to, use it as a lead generator on their speaking, on the speaking stage. It is to give it away. And they have seen huge success by doing that. So great story.
I mean, I was underplaying this guy. I mean, he said people were, where I lived at the time, I don't live in the center of the universe by any means at the moment, but I live in a big world city. I lived at that time in a little city in the northeast of Scotland. There aren't very many global consultants in that city. This guy was being flown all over the world. I'm doing Aberdeen down a little bit. Anybody from Aberdeen who's listening, it's one of the centers of the oil industry in the world in terms of customer service and corporate training. It's just not. And this guy had made it work, and I've never forgotten that.
Yeah.
So Anita, we need to segue into part 2, where we're going to look at 3 things. And thankfully you did get the email, you did understand the questions, And you have got 3 things for me. So thing number 1, what's behind window number 1?
I would say what's behind window number 1, we've kind of already talked about, which is clarify, simplify, and focus your business and even your book approach, right? We complicate everything in life. And I am probably a minimalist in many aspects of my life, certainly in my business. I want to keep it simple. I want to be clear. I want to focus on what I'm doing. So just remember that less is more oftentimes. We don't have to do all the things all the time. We don't need a bucket of whether it's marketing tools and resources or business tools and resources all at the same time. It becomes madness when we complicate things, when we make things too complex. So really be clear, be simple, and be focused. Life and business have a way of taking us down different roads, but be clear, be focused, and remember that you get to decide how you do your business. You don't have to do it like everybody else. And, take the road less traveled and away from the hustle and grind journey and more so onto a simplified pathway.
I really like that. I think it's important to restate it. And as you were speaking about simplifying and clarifying and simplifying the book side of things, I remember I've just finished writing a book. I am actually saying this, it's done. But it's probably attempt number 3. The first attempt was the unified theory of everything according to Bob. And I very quickly realized this is a book that is never going to happen. And nobody's ever going to be able to understand what I'm talking about. I need a book that's about one little corner of what I want to talk about. And what's the most valuable corner? That's what I'm going to talk about. And that book actually got done. And it's a good case in point to what you were talking about, because it was hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Even hard things. When we simplify it, it makes it easier.
Yeah.
For me, thing number 2 is for entrepreneurs and even authors as well, to learn to work inside your comfort zone. Your comfort zone. Everybody's trying to get outside their comfort zone, right? We're all challenging ourselves to do these extreme things. We're trying to push ourselves to do the next hard thing. And I'm not opposed to doing something different and something unique and stretching yourself. I think that's great. But I believe to get to a successful business that you absolutely love, you need to learn to work inside your comfort zone. So many entrepreneurs spend so much time trying to get out of a comfort zone that they've never even been in that it becomes super difficult. And when I say comfort zone from a business perspective, I'm really talking about that place of where we talked about earlier, having processes and systems and a way to do your thing that it comes out the same way each time, that your output is consistent, which means that your input is probably consistent, and that is your comfort zone. As some people call it, your zone of genius. Find your way to create that comfort zone. Work in it for some time, perfect your comfort zone, and then you can get out of it. You try something new or maybe add a new spice to the soup, but learn to work inside your comfort zone. That is liberation for me when I stopped constantly trying all these things and just decided, well, that worked last time and that worked in this order. And we got this great output. And every time I do it in that order, I get the great output. And, my client is excited and the book turns out well. And yeah, that's the comfort zone. And I think business owners need to learn how to work inside their comfort zone.
It's really interesting. I think we spoke about the hustle culture earlier on, and that really is focused on if you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not doing the right thing. Whereas I like to take a much more holistic approach and think that if we're constantly sitting in our comfort zone, there's very little growth in the comfort zone. And I think for me, it's a process of breathing in and out of our comfort zone. We need to go up, touch it, maybe experience a little bit, but come back again. Mm-hmm. And I think as I'm listening to you, what I'm thinking is very few people spend time really understanding in detail, okay, what is right in front of me? What am I actually really good at? What do I enjoy doing? And from there, where does it make sense to become uncomfortable?
Mm.
And for how long and for why? And not simply trying all the things that everybody says you should do, even though they feel alien to you and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you're going to be uncomfortable, be really clear on why
Mm-hmm.
and for how long, to what end. I think that's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To spend some time.
There you go. Well, I have a thing 3. My thing 3 that's worked for me is being unavailable. And that sounds antithetical to successful business. But I have learned that my brain needs time away from the busyness of my business. And so I've learned to make sure I have time for myself. This is just a human thing, quite frankly, but certainly as a business owner, it's critical. So I typically block 1 day a week off my calendar. Well, no one can schedule anything. I don't have any calls, but I'm working, but it's just a day to breathe. So for me, it's Monday. I block a week a month, believe it or not, where my calendar is closed to people, being able to use my online scheduler. I'm working, but I'm not interrupted by calls. Okay. And then I, believe it or not, block the last 2 months of the year. That was scary. I've done that for I've done that probably for the last 3 years. And super scary the first time I did it. But I started the following year like gangbusters. People were like, "Oh, Anita, I need to get on your calendar. I want to start my book in January," which is not the most unusual thing. But knowing that they couldn't start in November or December made them hungry to be the first one on the calendar.
Mm.
So I challenge business owners to test yourself, to be unavailable at some point. You don't have to go to the extreme that I do, a day a week a month, and 2 months out of the year, but find some time to be unavailable. It tends to, the opportunity exists that it could make you more attractive to people. When they know you're not available all the time, they want to make a decision to get on your calendar, to say yes to your product, to say yes to your service, so that they're on your schedule and they're not one who's left behind and waiting, to get in where they can fit in. It's a game changer.
Yeah, it's really interesting. As I'm listening, I can imagine that triggering fear in a lot of people. And I've learned that fear shrinks in the light, and sometimes you get some really interesting information if you shine a light on that fear. And there's usually some wonderful opportunities in there. Certainly, I look at the idea of, and I think what you're doing is often project focused, whereas somebody like me, it's more sort of ongoing consulting focused. So the idea for me of telling people for 2 months of the year, there's going to be no Bob Gentle, I immediately think that's impossible. I couldn't do that. But what if?
What if?
What if I actually spent a month thinking, how could I reorganize things so that was something my clients anticipated and could say yes to? And if you're listening, I'm not suggesting this. Relax, guys. But being creative around how we make space for the things that move our businesses forward, both in terms of how we feel about being in our businesses, but also about the more creative aspects that are actually going to drive us forward. Not enough people spend enough time on the things that are going to move the needle, as opposed to those things that are on fire. So I'm going to have to play with that idea.
Play with that. Remember, Bob, and the audience, you're people too. Entrepreneurs are people too. Business owners are people too. We have desires, we have a life, we have family, we have community, and we need to allow ourselves to engage in that aspect of our lives as well. Business shouldn't be all encompassing. It should not. So we need to find and reconnect sometimes with the other things besides our business that bring us joy, which is why the subtitle of my book is Lessons from My Journey to Work Less, Earn More, and Play More. It's absolutely possible.
So, Anita, if people at home are thinking, you know what, I need some more Anita Henderson in my life, how can they make that happen?
Well, I know you will drop links down below. I'm active on LinkedIn and Instagram. You can find me at writeyourlife.net. That's my website. And yeah, you can just get more Anita. Certainly schedule a book strategy session if you want to talk about the possibility of you actually becoming author of. And as I tell my clients, by this time next year, you could actually be a published author.
Well, I have learned a lot. I have a lot to reflect on today. I'm going to have to go and make some notes. Thankfully, I'm sure ChatGPT will help me with this. Having the recordings and the transcripts is just golden, because sometimes I leave an interview with just so much to process. And today is one of those days. So, Anita, you have been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed this. I'd love to have you back sometime. But for now, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Bob, before we exit, I'll add one other thing for those who want to get a little more insight on those 3 tenets of the Minimalist Entrepreneur. Please go to minimalist.writeyourlife.net and you can download those tenets.
I will put that in the show notes so people can just click on the link underneath or above this or wherever you're listening to it. So for you at home, that does bring us to the end of another episode. Thank you for listening or for watching wherever you find this. And if you did enjoy the show, then I would welcome you to leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. That's 5, like the fingers on your hand. Count them. And again, if you did enjoy this, you will love the Personal Brand Business Roadmap. It's everything you need to start, scale, or fix your expert business. 50 pages, completely free as a gift from me. Just visit amplifyme.agency/roadmap. You at home, thank you for listening. And Anita, thank you.